causing additional tax compression than projected for the district, reducing our total tax rate to 1.0599, a reduction of over 7 pennies. Due to a state-declared disaster for Winter Storm Uri, any district who experienced any damage or expenditures in response to the disaster are eligible to declare disaster pennies. The last column on the schedule represents the max rate allowed under the disaster. If opted to declare, our max could potentially be 1.1013. However, we as a district chose not to exceed what was already published and leave a combined rate of 1.0964. The effect to our budget based on the tax rate is as follows. If no disaster pennies are claimed, the projected net effect of 1.0599 will reduce our total budget by over $300,000. If declared, a projected net increase of $3.3 million, not just from taxes, but from state funding due to the increase in our tax effort. Winter Storm Uri began on February 11th, 2021. Governor Greg Abbott declared a disaster on February 12th, which provides districts the opportunity to claim disaster pennies. A presidential disaster was declared for all Texas counties on February 19th, 2021. Any disaster pennies adopted under this provision are for a period of 1 year only. Damages encountered by our district include plumbing and sprinkler system repairs, labor related to preparing, assessing, cleanup, and repairing pre- and post-storm, as well as shrub, palms, and tree losses and removal of debris. This slide shows the proposed tax rate to our taxpayers. In addition to the decrease in tax rate, homestead exemptions also increased from $25,000 to $40,000, giving the taxpayer additional relief. For example, a home valued at $200,000 will expect a decrease over prior year of $235.51, or $19.63 monthly. The 2022 tax rate is required to be adopted prior to September 30th. Pending tonight's discussion, we plan to bring to the board a resolution to adopt a combined tax rate of 10964 with a declared disaster option, the first meeting in September. We received an opinion letter from legal counsel, and this slide shows a draft of the resolution, and Mr. O'Hanlon is here to answer questions regarding this resolution. As part of our discussion, we are including a timeline of events for a voter-approved tax rate election. By July 8th, an auditor for an efficiency audit would have to have been selected by the district. It is not required for this year due to the pandemic disaster, but it will be required for tax year 2023 unless amended by the state. August 22nd is a deadline to declare an election to be held on a uniform election date scheduled for November 8th. Next year's uniform election rate is November 7th, and the last day to declare would be the 21st of August. If a VATRE election is selected, October's tax statements will be distributed by Hidalgo County Tax Office showing no tax assessed for our district, pending election results. After the election, the district would need to contract the Hidalgo County Tax Office for a fee to reissue statements reflecting the new assessed tax rate. For example, the taxpayer would see an increase from 0 taxes due to either a 10964 or a 10599 if passed or failed respectively. This change to have the election on a uniform date was due to HB3 and would need to be thoroughly explained with our taxpayers. A favorable election could potentially reap the same pennies as a current declared disaster option available to the district for tax year 2022. Therefore, we propose to start potential VATRE conversations early in the following budget season, allowing the district to have conversations with our community if that is the route chosen by administration and the board. That concludes my report. Any questions?
All right, board, we have the opportunity to ask questions of Ms. Felix.
Here you go, Mr. President. And a copy goes to the superintendent.
This is dated August 15th of 2022 to myself and Dr. Gonzalez in accordance with McAllen ISD Board Policy BE Local, requesting a special board meeting for Friday, August the 19th, 2022 at 5:30 p.m., currently tentative. The agenda item is for the McAllen ISD Board of Trustees to call for a voter-approved tax ratification election, a VATER. I am requesting the agenda item calling for a VATER be broken down into several step-by-step board actionables, which would include, but not limited to the following, once discussed with legal counsel. 1, the board action to call for the district to hold a VATER on the November uniform election date, 2022. 2, the board approved a public request for a .0289 permanent adoption through a voter-approved tax ratification election. 3, the board approved the sole use of the .0289 VATRE is for security upgrade and establishment of a universal pre-K3 and pre-K4 program available at no cost to all MISD families. 4, the board action to call for an efficiency audit to provide information to the voters regarding McAllen ISD's fiscal management, efficiency, and utilization of resources before the VATRE. And 5, the board approve the required ballot language found on the Comptroller's TNT website in the elections to approve tax rate section under school district. Thank you and for your attention in this regard. Trustee Sam Saldivar Jr.
I don't think we should be taxing people without an election. The discussions I had earlier, I don't want to embarrass the administration, but that doesn't justify a declared disaster and to tax people for that without them having a say. So let the voters decide and let the voters determine. That's my opinion, but I think the board should actually take an action on that. If we vote it down, that's fine. But I also think, and I've tried, and I think this board, many of us has tried, and there's a prior board member, Trustee Esparza, that tried to get a universal pre-K here. And, you know, we've tried every which way. We all know the information. We all have the data. We know what's happening. And it's consistently being informed that we know we get them at pre-K3 and pre-K4, we're in a much better position. So that's just my opinion. I think the board should be voting on whether or not to do the VATRE.
Thank you, Trustee.
But the money should only go for those two items. Let the public know that that's all it's going to be used for.
Trustee Alvarado.
Just some clarifications, and I'm going to be very basic on it, just make sure I understand it. Go back to your declared disaster. So we were in a declared disaster this past year.
In 2021, therefore, we are able to claim them for tax year 2022.
And so you're requesting the same amount this year under the,
We're requesting to stay at the rate that we published at 10964. That was what we originally estimated our tax rate would be,
okay.
based on the property values.
And it was 3 million something that generated?
So there is a couple of things. So there's not just tax collections, it also affects our state funding.
Right.
So if you notice, under no declared disaster, we lose 1.5 million in state funding. What happens is, when the tier 2 side, we get to benefit those extra pennies because there's tier 1 and tier 2. Tier 1 keeps us balanced, tier 2 is based on our enrichment pennies. And that's what it will help offset. So if we show an increased tax effort, that's what offsets that state funding portion.
Okay. What's this money being earmarked if it does pass?
Well, we have two things. One is that we did project the deficit, right? So what it does is either frees up the money for our safety needs that we are working with the police department as well as our district ops to determine where the needs are for improvements. So that is one thing. So it could either help us bring up ESSER to do those safety components and or gives us this money to do the safety components, still utilizing ESSER. So it could give us the same response.
Okay. Now go to the other, I was going to say keep going. One more slide, yeah.
This one?
That one. I was going to mispronounce the voter approved tax rate. How much, if that's passed, how much would that be?
It would be the same pennies if we do it this same year. So if we do a declared disaster, it's 10964. If we do a voter approved tax election, it could be 10964 as well.
The last time we discussed this, I think it was a vote of 4-3 for it to go forward.
42.
4-2?
One was not present. One board member.
Okay. I did vote in the affirmative. I'm struggling with it. I understand, and I see why Trustee Sandoval wrote this. I totally agree. But my struggle is I've gotten pushback that we're trying to raise money right under the inflation, which Trustee Sandoval definitely alluded to in the beginning. No one wants to raise taxes, right?
Right.
I think the only thing, though, the pushback that I was really surprised, because I was pushing with the district that we should be discussing more with the state about changing attendance from average daily attendance to, and doing that, right? And I got shot down, or I haven't really said anything public about it, because they said, how can you do that, Mr. Alvarado, when you voted for using ESSER funds for some projects with the city? I'll just leave it at that. And you're not tying your belt, you're not doing what you need to do. And so I've taken that to heart. And so You know, and and then they added, and now you're asking for a tax increase. Y'all need to, you know, buckle down. I think we said at the last meeting, a couple of trustees on that side, in which I agree that we need to just buckle down, and I'm gonna stick to that. And so until we change that, in my opinion, again, of course, we're all seven, right? And I'm not speaking for anybody, just for myself. I won't be voting for this moving forward until I feel we have done everything we can within our own budget. So I appreciate this. I'm still on the fence on the other, because I understand what Trustee Sandoval is saying is we're trying to pass a taxing, you know, declared disaster. Maybe it should go to voters, I don't know, or maybe, you know, I'm still struggling with that one as well, but we just got to do a better job, in my opinion, of just what we have and prioritizing some of our programs that we're doing. So just some of my thoughts. Again, nothing, you know, that's what makes the board function, is that we should not have the same opinion. We should have different opinions and try to get to some common ground. So not calling anybody out or what have you. I'm just trying to share my thoughts, and I know I get excited at times, so I'm trying to be very calm in my delivery, because I know this is a serious matter, but I do, because I'm going to reverse my trend on the voter-approved tax rate right now, until I feel we have done everything. And so I will end it with this way. I know you sent me an email to go and travel in San Antonio in a couple of weeks. I'm going to go ahead and rescind that, because I don't feel right traveling. I can do online, so I'll do my part to save district some money. So if it needs to start with all of us and just kind of trickle down, so that I'm just my two cents. That's all I have.
Thank you, Trustee Alvarado. Trustee Peña.
I'm going to try not to be as excited as I was the last time, but just curiosity, what is universal pre-K-3 costing us, or what would it cost?
Do we have that figure on hand?
Can we just do a guesstimate, a más o menos?
The last time, each classroom, teacher salary, classroom, we estimated about $100,000 each classroom. So now we do, correct me if I'm wrong, we do have universal pre-K. However, the ones that are selected, like for other areas, those are the ones that we charge, like for the ones that are already full. Those are the ones that we provide a fee assessed to it, because they're at capacity.
Ms. Peña, to be real clear, if you make $100,000 a year and you're not formal military, you don't qualify. You got to pay. You can't. So right now they're charging you tuition. That's what we're charging tuition to these families that don't qualify. If you qualify because you're low socioeconomic, your first language is Spanish, and you qualify. But there's a lot of families that don't qualify, that are going elsewhere, and superintendent has said time and time again, and not putting words in his mouth, but if you catch them at 3 or 4 years old, and especially you get the oldest one, and there's 2 or 3 young, then you have a real good chance of a movement. So I'm just trying to figure out another solution to try to capture that, and without, and San Antonio did this, by the way. They did exactly this, 25 cents is what they did, 0.25 pennies to get universal
Pre-K.
A lot of pre-K, and they saw a positive move in those school districts that did it. I mean, so.
And if I may,
I'm
not, no, and thank you for your perspective on that. I am not disputing that everybody should have that option, you know, and should not have to be charged or have to pay tuition to bring their children here. And of course, it would be a boost to those students coming here. But yet, we still, and I will go back and I'm not going to elaborate again, but we have spending that can wait. We have projects that are not being exclusively done with our district, and projects that we need to go back and revisit. And it's about tightening our belts. And if you want universal pre-K and you want everybody to go into pre-K, then we're going to have to sacrifice some of those other projects. If you want to be able to give teachers raises and maybe even give teachers who are 20 years plus raises, we have to go back and look at those projects. There is one in particular, there's two. There's one in particular that, having the educational background that I have, I understand, I know, and I know the expense that comes with it. I will not support this until we learn and we start looking at those projects methodically and figuring out what we can do right now, what we can't. You're not going to tell me that by bringing that one large project here, that it's exclusive to us, that it's unique. It is not. It is not exclusive to us. It is not unique. And so at this point, I am not going to support taxing our people. I'm not going to support even putting something on a ballot that says, you give us a little bit more money and maybe we can pay you more. Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Thank you, Trustee Peña. Trustee Suarez.
I'm sorry, clarify the amount. Did you get an amount? Maybe I was paying
I
attention.
didn't get an amount,
Do
but,
we know the total amount, or can we get that later?
100,000 per
Well, what
classroom.
what we were told in several budget workshops, and, you know, it was about $2 million per year, and that you do not get ADA for pre-K or 3 and 4. You don't get it until they get into kinder. So the only ones that we're getting reimbursed is those at that low socioeconomic group. And so with our population dropping, birth rate and the like, and I totally agree with you. I don't like that we're in this situation. And I've said time and time again, and Trustee Vela said at the last meeting, we got to tighten our belt. We got to cut that. But I've not seen that happen by the minute. I haven't seen any workshop to say, hey, let's go over these things that you just mentioned. I agree with you. We need to sit down and start looking at these things. But I haven't heard, nobody's brought it forward. And I had to insist to get to this point to discuss this.
Yeah.
Now I'm emotional because you're talking about hard-earned taxpayer money. But what's being proposed here you heard it's the same rate, is to declare a disaster, which we did not suffer a disaster. We suffered a weather event. And having worked in that type of business for a long time, there's a difference. And the information we were given, unless it's changed, it was less than $300,000, and most of it was labor, repurposing labor to address things. And the intent of a disaster declaration is that you have to go to your taxpayer and you should explain that we're going to take a tax increase. In this case, they're talking about the same amount without a say at all, for 1 year, and the intent is it covers the deductible because the policy covers per campus. It's not cumulative. So every damage in every school has a deductible, and a lot of times you don't reach that. So by going to the taxpayer, by declaring a disaster, you're charging the taxpayer that rate, and that's not right. That's not right. And so
Neither one of these two are right.
neither one of us is right. You're
Tighten
right.
your belt. Let's look at those projects again. There's $12.5 million in one project that is not unique, it's not exclusive, can wait, we can always partner with them at another time, and that buys you 3 years. If you're telling us you need 3.2 million every year, divide that by 3, that buys you 3 years to come up with a solution.
Then you should be asking, or I should be asking, or we should be asking to be put on the agenda for us to act on that. But it's not coming. It's not coming from the administration, is it?
So let's stay on track. Trustee Peña, any further comments? Mr. Suarez.
I kind of want to talk a little bit about, just because it was brought up, about universal pre-K, because I know that I was one of the ones pushing that back when I first got on the board. And I'm just saying, not now, but in the future, if for any reason we would want to tax our community for universal pre-K, I would ask for this board to make sure that the only kids that are going to, or the only families that are going to reap the benefits are the people who live in McAllen. If you're going to be taxed higher so that you could have universal, it should be exclusive to the taxpayer that's paying money here in McAllen. It wouldn't be fair for someone to go live in a surrounding city, in a surrounding school district, pay less taxes, but reap the benefits of some of us who no longer have kids that are going to go to pre-K are willing to pay those taxes, but yet our community doesn't reap the benefits. And that's just talking about that in the future. Now that's going to happen. Now, I want to talk about the scenarios, if Ms. Felix, if I'm correct. If we don't declare, well, first of all, I know a couple of years back, the board declared we got an incentive also for doing a tax relief. How much did we gain from that?
Right here, this was actually last year, in 2021, we had declared due to the
Hurricane Hannah.
Right, and then prior to that, I think it was 2018 or 17, we declared another one.
Correct.
Okay. So I have some questions for Mr. O'Hanlon, but before we get there, I just want to look at the scenarios. If this is true, and we do not get those pennies, and let's just say hypothetically, we go out for an election and we lose, it's possible that now we no longer have that money, and we've lost an election, and we're in a deficit that amount of money.
Correct. We'll be at the 105.99.
Okay, I'm just asking for a scenario. Now, let's talk hypothetically, and I guess this is for Mr. O'Hanlon. When the governor does this, this declaration, it's obviously done in a broad language so that districts reap the benefits of this. Is there anything that's unethical about asking for this declaration if the amount that we're getting is not the amount that was sustained?
No. The language of the statute is clear. The statutory condition is that as a precondition of that, there are a number of elements. There has to be a declared disaster. There was, the Winter Storm Uri. The governor needs to have asked for disaster relief for the area that is trying to exercise this disaster penny. They did. They asked for disaster pennies for that, for that declared a disaster, asked federal relief for the entire state of Texas. First time it's ever happened, by the way, but they did. Third, the district has to have incurred expenses as a result of the event. There is no provision in the law that says the expenses have to equal the amount. There's no provision in the law that deals with insurance proceeds or anything of that nature. There are other provisions in the law that got put in after Uri last session where you can get grants from TEA and things of that nature. There's no offset for that in that statute either. And they knew what they were doing because they amended, this statute's been on the books for a long time. They amended the statute in the last session of the legislature. They did a couple of things. They said, you can only get one disaster. A disaster is only good for a year. The one in Houston, the governor declared disaster year after year after year, and districts were using it year after year after year because of the disaster declaration. Even though they weren't incurring additional expenses during that, but they were still doing it, and that was fine. That was under the law. So disaster declaration, federal relief, you have to incur expenses. All of those elements are present here in this case. So you are entitled to declare a disaster and to levy without, it's the same levy question, you just don't have to have the voter-approved tax rate election this year. Now, important thing about this, it's good for 1 year, okay? If you guys, and it looks like you have incorporated, whether it's voter-approved tax rate or disaster pennies in your budget planning, that's going to be, you're spending a bunch of the money on the district, ongoing district expenses and things of that nature. There's going to have to be absent another disaster, hopefully there won't be one, there'll have to be a voter-approved TRE election, the old terminology, voter-approved tax rate election, new terminology, next year. But here we are in this this is the circumstances in which we find ourselves. It's exacerbated a little bit by the fact that you have a July 1 year. So you set the budget earlier than this. You've already incurred the expenses because you've set the wages in terms of that. So that in the event that there is a negative voter outcome, then it puts you in a deficit, significant deficit spending situation for the year, which creates a hole for the next year, reduces your fiscal soundness, your fund balance, and things of that nature. To me, if I heard what Mr. Saldivar said about the efficiency study, that efficiency study needs to be done before you set the budget. Next year, you need to, assuming you pass it, I don't try to be presumptuous, you're gonna have to have one next year probably. You're gonna have to do the efficiency study because that's a requirement of the law. My advice is that you do it well before the budget so you can see where you are with respect to the budget adoption before you do that. And then you kind of, what we recommend, which hasn't happened here because this was a late arriving project, you adopt a budget and what I call a budget addendum. The budget addendum is if this passes, what you're going to do with the money. So the voters have some transparency in terms of the board decisions about where the extra revenues are going to go, what it's going to be spent on, and then they can kind of give you some guidance with respect to whether they agree on your funding priorities in terms of what's out there. But there's a risk, and there's a particular risk now because we got inflation, we've got all these other kinds of things going on in terms of that is likely to lead to a negative outcome of this, which is going to have a significant negative impact on your resources, and you've spent the money. You have right now, in the absence of either a TRE passage or that, you're going to have a significant deficit budget, and that's a significant risk in these times. So yeah, it's legal. You can do it. It's up to you about whether you do it. If you do this, it's good for this year. You're going to have to face the voters next year. But you can have the benefit of a bit more planning so you can, before you get here, decide what to do about raises and extra projects and other kinds of things. And then you build a budget and a half, if you will. You build the budget that says, this is what the base budget is on the rollback, and it's going to go back to the rate. And this is, if it passes, this is what we're going to do with the extra money. You can publish that. That's not advocacy. But you can't advocate, so vote for this. You can't say, but you can say, this is what we're going to do with the money. And that's kind of transparency in government in terms of what's out there. It's kind of a plebiscite on the spending decisions. One other thing with respect to that, this is against the background where, and this is going to happen again next year as well, I suspect. We'll see because of the recession and things of that nature. But we're in a long-term trend in the state of Texas. Oil prices are going up. Real estate values are going up. I think they're not going to go up as much next year as this year. But we had tax rate compression this year. There's going to be additional tax rate compression next year. This year, TRE, if you do either the voter-approved tax rate or the disaster pennies, you're still going to have a budget. You're going to still have a reduction in your tax rate in terms of what the voters are getting. Next year, if we, and the reason why you're not getting a bigger bump, you did disaster pennies last year. You've done it, this is the third time in you've done it 2 in the last 5 years, 2 in the last 5 or 6 years. So this has happened before. If you look at trying to set up a rational schedule, you're a bit late in the game in terms of the expenditure crunch this puts you in. And the state absolutely lets you do it. I'm doing 30, 40 of these across all over the state of Texas in terms of what's out there, the people that are adopting these. And next year, you're going to have another tax rate compression. So even if it passes, even if you decide to go voter-approved tax rate, if it passes, because the Tier 2 can't go up and Tier 1's going to be compressed, the tax rate's going to go down again. So it is trying to manage where you are. The state keeps putting all these expenditure requirements on you. We're trying to balance, and trustees got a hard job. You're trying to balance marshaling resources for your students, adequately paying and compensating staff, and still managing the tax rate in a way that's not confiscatory for the people in the district. So the hard decision, not taking it out, but in these times where you're getting significant tier one tax rate compression, it gives you the opportunity to compensate, take care of your kids and compensate your teachers a bit better. And so that's what and still reduce the tax rate.
Trustee Suarez, will you the floor? Trustee Eliseda.
So I think we all have the same goal in mind, and our goal is to raise as much money for the school, to generate as much revenue as we can for our budget. I really like that this is not raising taxes, it's keeping taxes the same that they are right now. I really like that it's a sure thing. I dislike that the TRE is not a sure thing. So we're not assured we're gonna get that money. I really like that if we would do the disaster, we have time to plan, like you said, for next year. And I really like the idea of the budget addendum. I really dislike, if we were to do the TRE, how fast it has to be, how quick it has to be. It feels very rushed. It doesn't feel like a sure thing. And both ways, we're not raising taxes. The taxes stay the same. So for me, I want the goal of raising money just like we all do, but I want the sure thing. It's legal, it's ethical, it's pennies that the government put aside for us. We were part of the disaster, Yuri. Everybody in the state is probably trying to get these pennies. I know we're just taking consensus here, we can't vote or anything like that, but my consensus goes with you don't raise taxes, you keep the declared disaster. We have a year to plan for a TRE. We have a year to do town halls, to talk about projects that should or shouldn't happen, to talk about salaries, because salaries are the biggest part of our budget problem is salaries. And so we need to talk about letting positions go. And we have a year to do that, and we need to have workshops on that, maybe monthly. And like Trustee Saldivar said, we can't talk about the budget just starting in March. We need to talk about it all year long. And maybe that would be a good solution for everybody. We all get the sure thing of the $1.09 right now, and we have a year to really plan things out and to really go through and really cut things with very purposeful cuts, programs that we aren't using, things that we aren't using, but it gives us time to do things. So we all have the same goal in mind. We get the money, and it gives us time to make those cuts and to do those budgetary things that we need to. So for me, the consensus for my part, if you're taking consensus, would be to stay with the disaster declared URI and do what other school districts are doing and get those pennies. It's because it's a sure thing, and we need that money. So I'll yield the floor.
Trustee Peña. Could you move the mic closer? Thank you,
Again,
ma'am.
this microphone, love-hate relationship. I agree with Trustee Eliseda, and I think right now we're in a situation where we just can't rush into stuff. Here we are. I'm utterly upset yet again about this whole situation, and then we throw in universal 3-year-old program on top of everything else. Like, let's slow down here. I know it's necessary. I would love to be able to just offer it to everybody, but we need to slow down here. People are still not recovered from the pandemic. The pandemic has not gone away. COVID is back. I just recovered from COVID. I was super sick 3 weeks ago. It's not going away, and we can't just jump into, we need to stop spending the way we spend. We really need to buckle down and look at things, and this is way too rushed for me, and I will not be swayed any other way, not today.
Thank you, ma'am.
I still want to vote. I may be the only vote, and that's fine. And then we can always vote on the other. We can have it the same thing. And I weighed on this very, very heavily because it is the same, and there is no sure thing. But we teach our children to take managed risks, and I think I believe in our community when they see what we're going to do and how we're going to do it, I think they're going to come through. And then they know that it's going to be forward the same rate. there's no assurance next year we're gonna have a declared disaster that we can count on. I mean, as it was mentioned, 3 out of the last 6 years, and it's gonna get compressed again. And it is a risk, I totally agree, and I know I may not have the votes, and that's fine. But item number 3 was very specific, and I took a lot of time to think each element out to make sure there was no misunderstanding. So that to be no misunderstanding here tonight, number 3 says the board approved, this is an actionable that would be on Friday, that the board approved the sole use of the .0289 VT, and I got that, by the way, and it may have to change a little bit, but I got that from the administration's packet that was the vendor that you all hired to talk to us, Mo Casey. And it's on page 3 of the PowerPoint where it shows the penny rates based on the declared disaster for 21-22. So it's the same pennies which you've just confirmed. It's the same. It's the same amount. It's the same figure.
0.0444.
Exactly, but it states here very clearly, .0289 VATRE is for security upgrade and establishment of a universal pre-K and pre-K4 program available at no cost to all McAllen ISD families. There's no ambiguity to that. So anybody wants to come up from another district, great, you're welcome. But there's probably going to be a tuition, or unless you qualify. But for our families, they would get, just like the Edinburgh families get, just like other school districts around, they get 100% pre-K3, pre-K4, which we do not offer. And it's not rushing. This is something that, even if it got passed, you'd have to work on it for next year. And so, I'm a chess player, not a checker player. And so I'm looking at multiple years with no guarantees of any given year with that legislature what they're going to do. And we found out with HB3, we were all happy, we were all joyous, we all celebrated until we really looked at it and saw what it actually did to us. It wasn't very good. $9 billion at the beginning, oh, yeah, and then, 30% for staff, oh, great. And we, of course, we went up closer to 40, and because we believed in our staff and all that, and sacate, the next legislative session, nothing. And even then, they tried to fix some of the things that were not included, they were taken out, like GT and some other programs in House Bill 3. But this compression, I have a lot of information on that, and if anybody wants to talk about what that really means and what's going to happen, the only guarantee we have is that we're going to continue to be in this bind going forward no matter what we do. And so I'm just suggesting it's going to be an up and down vote, that's fine. But that's why I was very careful to go and not just be a one-line thing, the board approve of VTAR. I said, no, that each one is an element. Obviously, number 1, if we don't get past that, it's over. But it's very specific. But the other is I want it on the record. I want it on the record so that we go forward next year, that we actually going to do something next year about this. And what the specifics ought to be. And at the very least, those are 2 fundamental things we got to do in this district. The safety and security, which we are, and the other is to get more students into this district that are homegrown from our community and not relying on 2,000 may come in from others if we do this thing and that thing. And we cannot take away programs that are directly impact students. We can't. But at the same time, we got to really seriously look at these other programs, because if we do, in my opinion, if we go to the 1.0599, it forces us to do what we should have been doing right now, and is looking at some of these programs, as was mentioned a while ago, that would clearly cover the gap over the next 2 years. And if we ask for another VTR 2 years from now, if this one doesn't pass, we could clearly cover that gap just with that one program. So, again, I've looked at this from all possible angles. If I can't convince the other, that's fine, but I still am asking for a vote on Friday.
Thank you, trustee. Any further questions for administration on the board workshop? With that being said, it's 8:36. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I have a motion by trustee Salivas. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by trustee
I
Peña.
have a clarification on Friday, so, and I only saying it because I can't be here. So I'm just curious, are we having a meeting, or is our policy, it's one person can call a meeting, or is it 2 people?
No,
No.
he wants a vote.
To answer your question, the president can call a special board meeting, but he's already declared a tentative meeting for that, or 2 more members can ask for the meeting.
Okay.
So right now, I'm the only board member, so in fairness to the board, if there's not a second one and you choose not to call the meeting, then the issue's dead.
And I just wanted to put it publicly because I wasn't clear.
What time
on it,
is
so-
the meeting on Friday?
Well, he has to declare it, otherwise the issue's dead.
He tentatively placed the meeting
5:30.
At 5:30. Now, in fairness too, I wasn't asking for a tentative, I was asking for a meeting. But it's his prerogative to tentatively do so.
Unless
Only-
somebody else,
Unless I have two board members.
right.
That the board policy states the board president can call a special meeting or two members of the board. Any one member can ask for an agenda item.
And this meeting was tentatively set for that date after this workshop. It's already been done.
I don't,
Well, it's not on our calendars.
yeah, I don't have it on my calendar, and I don't think I can be here on Friday.
So we need
It's-
4 to be here. I mean, I can participate,
Oh, it's tentative.
It's tentative.
It was tentative.
Yeah.
I can participate, what do you call it, via
Virtual.
virtual.
But you have to.
We need to have 4 in the room.
Person.
You're not gonna be here?
Probably not. It's not on my calendar, even though it's tentative.
Are you gonna be here?
Dropping kids off.
You're dropping off kids too? That's what I'm doing this weekend.
Mr. President, since there is no two board members that are willing to sign off on this item, then it's, unless you declare it and it's your call, then I don't have two members. I'm the only member. And I'm fine with that.
You wanna ask Mr. Vela to be fair?
Well, he's not present in the meeting.
I know,
so-
well, you can ask him after.
No, to see if you have enough for quorum.
No,
Right,
what trustee
that's what I'm
Saldivar's
saying.
saying, though, is it's up to the president. So if the president doesn't see the will of the board, there's a consensus to hold that meeting. He doesn't need to call the meeting,
Well,
right?
I mean, technically, I could call Mr. Vela, but I'm not going to put him in that
Right.
position. He's not here to hear the
no,
debate.
I'm
so-
asking if he's gonna be here in person, cause there's 3 of us are out of here. So you can, unless he's here in person, you can't have the meeting Friday.
So don't.
It's up to you. Mr.
So
President.
we will not call the meeting for this Friday because of a lack of quorum. We will sit down and revisit for another opportunity sometime next week,
By the 22nd.
Actually, by the 22nd.
before the 22nd.
No, Wednesday we have a workshop.
Okay.
I guess Monday is what date? I'm sorry.
Monday is the 22nd, the
We
first
do
day
have
of school.
workshop Wednesday, and that's
We-
not a bad point, just, we're here anyway.
Yeah.
All right, I have a motion by trustee Saldivar and a second by trustee Peña to adjourn the meeting at 8:39. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. The ayes carry it, 6-0. This meeting is adjourned.